You're listening to RHR Talks, the podcast where the RHR team talks all things recruitment and advertising. We're going to be covering various topics on which we're regularly asked by candidates and hiring managers and offering our industry insight, which we hope you'll find useful, whether you're looking for that next opportunity or just to find the best talent. I'm Paul Walsh, one of the consultants at RHR. Each week, I'm going to be joined by my colleague and now podcast co-host, Tim Maguire. Tim and I are going to be talking with recruitment and advertising experts from various areas of our business. This week, we're very excited to be joined by our first external guest, Marketing Director Alex Kelly. We discuss his experience in all things marketing. You're our first external guest on this podcast, Alex, so I will give you the opportunity for you to introduce yourself. We are joined with Tim, as usual, my podcast co-host. Give us a hello. And we bringing back Danielle, who was actually a guest on episode 2.
Hello.
And yeah, over to you, Alex, really. Tell the people who you are.
Sure. Well, hugely privileged to be the first external guest. It can only get better from here. My name is Alex Kelly. I'm a marketing communications director. Typically, at the moment, I'm consulting for a few different brands. So my experience, my background was agency, sort of starting off in my career, which was 22 years ago. I know I don't look old enough, obviously, but so I did a bit of agency bit, and then I went off to go and work for M&S on campaigns and brand side of things. I was there for a while, about 9 years, and then went to Reiss as global head of marketing, and then Jigsaw in a sort of more multi-channel role, and then Neon, lovely wellness brand. And then Belstaff, where I was more recently. So, and then bits of consultancy in between. So, yeah, predominantly on the consumer sort of lifestyle marketing side of things, with a sort of retail apparel focus, I suppose.
Obvious question that I'm sure many people will be wondering: why start a career in marketing? What prompted you to pursue that?
And this will show my age, as I'm particularly sensitive at the moment because I've just come back from having my COVID vaccine and I got handed a leaflet for older adults, and I didn't know this until I came home and my kids started laughing at me. So I was like, oh God. It was really, I suppose, when I was a kid, I think about sort of what my parents think marketing is, because I've always had that problem trying to explain it to them. And adverts, really. So TV was predominantly where I spent my time as a child in the 80s. And you couldn't fast forward adverts. So like TV and adverts were hand in hand, and sort of the ads were almost part of the process. So big ads and sort of, I used to sit with my brother really sort of loving and singing ads, theme tunes and all that type of thing. So I was I think it was advertising really that had an impact on me in the 80s as a young kid. And then I suppose, and I wanted to be a vet. Like I studied animal science at university, and wow. Absolutely nothing to do with it. And then probably, we might talk about Guinness, but I started working for Guinness at university, and mostly because it was a really sweet job at university. You had loads of inflatable things. I had sort of a whole house full of like foam hands and hats and inflatable sofas. And
living the uni life.
It was amazing. It was brilliant. So loads of free stash, and that sort of I really enjoyed that. But they also put me through some training around sort of visual merchandising and sales promotion and techniques. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can combine two things that I really love, which is sort of free stash and drinking Guinness. And I was like, this whole marketing thing is really interesting. I think probably it's sort of like at one level maybe tick that box around that sort of childhood ad thing. So yeah, I think that's sort of what it started as. And then I ended up sort of applying to the Guinness graduate scheme, and I sort of went from thousands of people went for it, and I got down to the last 2 and I didn't get it. I choked on my last interview. Totally choked, and I think it's because I really wanted it. And they said, look, we think you could be a good agency guy, and they referred me to an agency that they used that was part of Publicis, and that's how I sort of ended up on the agency side. So yeah, that's sort of what made me want to get into marketing.
Everything happens for a reason, that's for sure. Then
yeah, or you post rationalize it afterwards.
Yeah, Sure.
But yeah, either way, one of those two things definitely. But yeah, I didn't end up as a vet. I remember I was sort of skipping around a farm visit when I was up at Newcastle University, and I was sort of had some really, really new high tech, not high tech, they're Reebok Classic trainers, and everyone else had their wellies on, and I was like, yeah, I've got this wrong.
I don't belong here.
London and marketing, yeah.
From all that, do you have an event or a campaign that is a real standout moment for you?
I'm probably on the Guinness side, actually. So if I say that, one of the things that made me want to go and work for Guinness at the time, you remember those amazing ads that they had, and they had, I can't remember who their agency were. I did used to know, but they were doing the surfer ads and the, Tic Dillatot.
Yeah.
Like amazingly aesthetic and hugely creative, beautiful ads. And so I still sort of, at that point when I was sort of thinking about what am I going to go and do, and those ads were around, and this is, when ads were real blockbuster stuff. So maybe that, I think, and then clever campaigns. I think This Girl Can was which I think that was maybe 8 years ago now. It's sort of been around for a while, but campaigns like that are really purpose driven, and I think are new and fresh and change people's perceptions, that have a real impact. And I think quite often you sort of look at what you do in marketing, and depending who you're working for, but a lot of the time you're not saving lives, but doing really important things, and I think changing people's mindset and perceptions, and the power that marketing can have if done in the right way. And good marketing is always about creating an emotional response. Mm-hmm. And that campaign, for example, and for different reasons, you can create an emotional response through pure creativity and aesthetics. You can create a response through really touching into a truth. You can touch into sentiment, emotion, all those other things. And I say that's a good one. And then for me, really, I suppose one that might sort of combine a bit of that in terms of like nice aesthetics, good aesthetics, and purpose-driven, creating an emotional response, was a campaign that I did for Jigsaw called Heart Immigration. And that was quite a brave campaign, really, I suppose. It was off the back of Donald Trump and building the wall that he never built, and thankfully won't have a chance to, and Brexit and some of the anti-immigration rhetoric. So at Jigsaw, we've gone on a bit of a process, and I think as a marketer, you can't just piggyback onto things. You have to earn your way into the space to have the right to talk about them. And at Jigsaw, we had, and I'd worked with the CEO, really amazing guy called Peter Reiss, who we developed this brand behavior, I suppose. It became an external facing campaign, but to start with, it was sort of the brand manifesto called Style and Truth. And the style bit was a pro style rather than pro fashion. It was almost anti-fashion, but it was more pro style. And Truth was about saying meaningful things and being a brand that stood up for and had authenticity and said the things that were worth being said. So Heart Immigration was a sort of stepping stone after a few campaigns. And we wanted to, the sort of scrupulous marketer in me, because we were challenged on this. You're only saying this because it gets you eyeballs and get people to talk about. Well, yeah, of course, as a marketer, that is the output. You want your campaigns to have reach and get talked about. But if you just jump onto that and do it without being able to back it up, then you quite quickly get shot down. And this campaign was about, from a fashion point of view, acknowledging that there is no such thing as 100% British. And, so we purposely wanted to be a bit spiky. We said, like, isn't immigration amazing? Like, aren't we all the more richer and more colourful and more diverse? And actually, most of the amazing things in this country in some way have been inspired. Like, what we were great at as a nation is going out into this world, sometimes quite scrupulously, and bringing the best things back. But our heritage, and in fact, like, everything you touch, the very few things are 100% British. And and even we played with the idea with we partnered up with ancestry.com, and we all sort of spat into little vials and did our DNA I'm actually 1% Finnish, so I'm basically a Viking, which is what I tell my children. Mostly Northern Irish, which was absolutely no surprise, as you'll probably guess with the name Kelly. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. So as a campaign, I think it was, for me, saying something that was worth saying, doing it in a creative way. We had a lot of fun with it. We really played the campaign through, and actually, and it really took the brand forward and got noticed. Got picked up by 24 different publications that then created their own content off the back of it.
Wow.
Other people like took that campaign and actually did a whole series with immigrants on their experiences of being an immigrant in the UK. So
amazing.
Yeah, it was good. It was a real moment, and you don't. I think you have to recognise that it doesn't often happen in careers. I think you have to be with the right brand, and you have to be with the right leadership team that are willing to take a risk. Because it was, on the face of it, for a predominantly white middle class brand. Go out there saying heart immigration. There are some, you have to back it up, and there are some risks. And I remember within the management team, somebody said, "Look, why do we have to do this? Can't we just make amazing clothes?" And fortunately, the CEO stood up and said to the person, "No, for exactly the reasons why you don't get this, we have to go out and stand for something." Yeah, Jigsaw was in this very sort of slightly homogenized, premium British like fashion set, which had a great time during the 90s, but they'd sort of lost a bit of their edge, and part of that campaign was giving the brand relevance and modernity again. So yeah, that was for me a real career highlight. Actually got taken into the V&A. It got pulled in as an example of how fashion can change mindset. So it's now a permanent inclusion in the V&A.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm so hugely privileged to work with teams that allowed me to do that type of work, and to work for a brand that allowed me to do that.
And just from hearing you say that, you forget how much psychology goes into these things.
Yeah, absolutely. We spent hours trying to pull it apart and prove it wrong, like hours, literally days. Like, before, and I've got to say, it was a nervy moment. It was quite brave. You've got to remember that, like, a few weeks before, there was, the bomb in Parsons Green that fortunately didn't go off. So we very nearly pulled the campaign, because it was we had a tube takeover. We were being very, very spiky in terms of our approach. It was social media, and then this sort of printed bit. We printed manifestos saying there's no such thing as 100% British, and put it into the papers that where this whole argument around immigration was sort of kicking on. So there was one bit where the terrorism was scaling, and we looked at it and said, do we really need to do this? And actually, as we stress tested it, we felt like, even more so now, we need to go out and be the brand that says.
That's even more important, yeah.
Yeah, and look, you sort of, on this stuff, you've got first movers advantage. Like, once you've done that as a brand, and you're the first person, nobody else can come in and do a diversity campaign. Unfortunately, people have done them subsequently. It's that diversity messages will never be a bad message. But I think from a marketing point of view, you've got to have first movers advantage. And we did the same thing really with Black Friday, and we won campaign of the year there. And you sort of got three options with Black Friday. You either do it and you play the discount game, you don't, or you do a charity thing. Now that's sort of pushed on. And for Belstaff, we did for Black Friday a percentage giveaway to homeless charities and sort of donation of coats. But for Jigsaw at the time, the charity bit, a few years ago, hadn't quite kicked in as much. But basically, Black Friday is a con. That TV that everyone's fighting over themselves to get was never worth 100% of the price. It was built in with margin at the first point. Now everyone in the industry knows this, but as a brand, that had this style and truth bit, we allowed ourselves to be the person to say it. And again, Peter, fortunately, we used him as a spokesperson. We put him onto BBC News and Sky News saying, Black Friday is not good for business, and it's not good for consumers, And so we wrote a very well written, and our editor, a lady called Anna Santi, who's a fabulous writer, wrote this amazing bit of prose around buying something because you truly love it, rather than it it was a buy red because it's her favorite color, not because purple's got 50% off. We price things honestly at 100% because they're worth 100%, not with margin built in. And so we again, we had this like first movers advantage on basically calling bullshit on
What's made you stay within the retail sector? Because looking at your career, you've worked with so many major players, well respected, desired brands, but you've stayed quite true to that sector. So why stay within that area?
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely too predictable. I need to switch it up a bit. I think because I've had loads of great challenges and I've had the chance to do good marketing, right? So I suppose to some respects, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I've had the chance also within those, M&S, I was working across foods, lingerie, home, beauty, kids, and they're all different business units, which is why I stuck around for a long time. At M&S, I might be doing, a kids campaign, but very lucky in that environment that's shooting it with Rankin and doing sort of, things there. And then on the other side, the England football team sponsorship and working on, big sponsorship deals. So there were loads of things around there. So it was very varied. Mm-hmm. And then, I changed. The businesses were very different. So M&S was big corporate stakeholder management. I found that quite frustrating towards the end. I wanted to, work much closer to the business of fashion and retail. Mm-hmm. And so, Reiss is just chalk and cheese to a Marks and Spencer. Working direct for David Reiss, founder, owner, a tough character. He's a tough old boot. David, I sort of, respect him, hugely respect him, and he frustrated me equally. And so you've got different challenges with those businesses. Jigsaw, again, it was a different type of environment on a different growth trajectory. And then I went to work for Neon, which was purposefully a change outside of that. But I think, and Belstaff is different as well. So there you're owned by Ineos. So Ineos are, very different ownership structure by Jim Ratcliffe, who, one of the most successful privately made men in the country, and that's a pharma business, which is petrochemicals and plastics and that sort of thing. So, they're very different. They're very different challenges. So yes, mostly retail. Increasingly, as the career has gone on, as the channels have developed, I've pushed towards those newer channels and more of a D2C focus and sort of less physical retail. So you can see it like M&S, like Reiss, Neon, Belstaff.
Yeah. You can see the transaction,
yeah, and sort of, I'm not sort of chasing the sun there, but I think as the channels develop and I want to be at the front of all the new stuff, and that's the great thing about marketing is it's constantly evolving. When I was a kid, all about ads. Well, now it's not, and it's about community and social media and social commerce and engagement and authenticity and purpose driven. So you transition as the channels transition, and there will be new channels and other ways of doing things, and they'll either be driven by technology or people or behavior. And obviously what we've gone through in the last year, you've seen fundamental huge shifts in the way that people interact. And, hopefully we won't have something like that to drive it again, but it is constantly evolving. So yes, it's retail, and actually I'm currently consulting for a fintech business, an online media sports business. It's great for me to sort of keep sharpening my bow in different areas and keep it fresh. But I'm lucky enough that the brands have been different as my career has progressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you feel that if you were to look outside of retail, I guess, as you said, you are working in fintech at the moment, that you're not going to be able to push the envelope as much as you have in retail and in that space?
Yeah, I look, consumer marketing is, you're right at the sharp end of it. And the things I like about retail and consumer is, look, it's competitive. It's really, like at the moment, it's brutal competitive. But I like that. I like being measured by sales as well. And whether their retail is just selling stuff, right? So everyone talks about multi-channel, omni-channel. We're all selling something. Service, a product, a coat, a candle, whatever it is. And I think that for me, and being measured at the sharp end of it and being at the competitive end of it is great. I enjoy new things and newness, and I enjoy working with teams who are hopefully better than me in each of their own respective channels, you know. So my job, and now, you know, at sort of a more senior level, is to shape that and guide it and give it the strategy to push the teams and as I say to them, if I know more about their channel than any of them, then we're probably in a danger zone. Like they all own their channels in my teams and be the experts, and also, you know, I think in terms of the characteristics of people that sort of you recruit into the team, like people who are absolutely inquisitive and willing to learn, because, you know, nobody knows everything. Like in a week's time, something new is out there, and it may or may not be right for you as a brand. But like, you have to have inquisitive people in your teams that are willing to learn and grow. And I definitely don't know everything. I'm definitely learning. And for me, if I stop learning, then that will probably be the point where I go and, I don't know, do gardening for a living, because I really like
yeah, I remember when a lot of my clients were looking for e-coms managers that focus on marketing, that really want someone that does absolutely everything from the offline, online, just throw it all in and give it one big title. A professional in everything isn't really possible, is it really?
Yeah, the unicorn.
Yeah.
Well, we're always looking for it.
I always wanted one.
Yeah, no, it's my daughter's birthday soon, so I don't want to. Luckily, they're not at homeschool anymore, so she can't hear me say that unicorns aren't real. I'll shatter the illusion. But in the same way, I've had this, you know, when I've been out either with internally having conversations with finance directors around, okay, who do we want in the business and what are the skill sets, and a pet bugbear of mine around, you know, digital marketing. I'm like, it's just marketing, but there are some very different skills and characteristics, and I think, you know, performance marketing is one thing, and I think digital marketing is a channel with which to deliver a marketing message, and is now obviously critical, like in the way that you approach. But as the channels have developed, right, so whereas, you know, it might have been right for you doing billboards and TV campaigns, and is still right for certain brands, you know, driving fame, it just, data makes them better now than they were before. That's the only different thing in terms of measurability and ROI. But digital marketing is a very important channel, and I think I had this before, and with a brand that was looking for someone to come and do sort of their marketing leadership, and they were looking for somebody who had all of that sort of brand stores, because they had some stores element, you know, the brand strategy side of things, research, but yet was an e-commerce and sorry, not an e-commerce, but was a CRM and performance specialist. And I was like, that doesn't exist at a certain age. It might in the future, but typically if you come through those channels, and, you know, if you're a specialist, you've started in that area and you will be of a certain age. So the people before that have worked through the channels will have then got senior enough to pick it up. And I think it's just an understanding around what those skill sets are. And if you gave to many, like, there are always going to be an exception and individuals that are rounded enough. But if you gave a consumer proposition and a creative brief to perhaps a performance marketer, then that's not their skill set. For them, like, someone who can read that data, pick into it, fight over the 0.2%, you know, test and learn, A/B, you know, all of that great stuff is not perhaps the other person. And I think understanding how those roles, you know, work together, and what I often say is, you know, before you get to sort of, you know, activating and sort of like hitting these performance channels or any of the other channels, you've got to know what you're saying first, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that is the bit that you need to be really clear on as a brand. What are you saying? You know, what is the objective of what you're saying first, and then how you deliver it.
When did you first notice the importance of online marketing, and when did you first think to yourself, oh, I see a shift in the wind almost?
It's a very clear moment for me. I was at Marks and Spencer, and actually one of the guys I then worked with at Jigsaw later, he ended up running their website, and the website was just like a store, right? It was one of the stores, and it was a thing you had to do and it was a bit of a pain in the arse, like the website, and
it's mad to think that.
Yeah, and he was an ex-store manager, so this is before there was everyone was learning the skills in e-commerce. So James actually was the guy who's fabulous and a really great e-commerce trader. And more than that, actually, and I remember sort of like just seeing like the numbers kicking up, and that the numbers kicking up wasn't really the changing point. The changing point for me is I put out a campaign, and I think this is more around the power of digital and as a communication channel and social media. And I mentioned I had this campaign called Do Your Thing, which was a kids campaign celebrating how amazing kids are and how talented they are, and it was sort of like a talent search competition sort of. And I mentioned Rankin earlier. He had shot it, and we've done this big thing. So we went to launch it, and it was a social first campaign almost, right at the front of when you might have social first campaigns. And I put it out, and there was a real sort of breakdown in communication around what other campaigns were going out on social, but that wasn't probably that much of an issue at that point in time. You'd manage it much better now. And M&S put out a message which was a name search for Percy Pig's girlfriend.
Okay.
And Percy Pig is a bit of an institution. I didn't quite realise how big, but my campaign got totally blown out of the water because
Percy Pig.
Everyone was talking about Percy Pig's girlfriend and like naming the next suite, and it just happened to go out on the same day, and totally destroyed this campaign. Like it didn't really, but I felt in my mind like it'd been blown out, and I was like, okay, this is the thing. You can't beat Kittens Cupcakes or Percy Pig on social media. And I was like, okay, there's something.
Was it Percy Pig's anniversary the other week? I think I saw on LinkedIn there was like a news article about it was Percy Pig's. I don't know how many years now. I don't want to throw a year out there, but yeah, it was his anniversary.
It is an institution. You're right.
It is an institution. I have worn the Percy Pig outfit, which was stashed away in a cupboard, and on a slow Friday afternoon at M&S, I decided to put that one.
What's his girlfriend called? It's Penny, isn't it?
Penny. It's Penny. Yeah. Yes. Penny is not a good name in the Kelly household. I mean, I won't tell you the budget. Rankin and my campaign didn't come cheap, but a little bit of creativity and good social media interaction blew us out of the water. So yeah, that's when I realised that social and digital was a thing that can't be ignored. And then I was very lucky to I moved on to Reiss, where the brand was being sort of run really lean and prepared for sale, and we were growing fast, but we lent very heavily in at an early stage into bloggers before bloggers were influencers, and before actually at the point where Instagram was a thing that you did if you had a blog, then you had a picture on the side. Brand partnerships and digital were a more cost-effective way to grow, and we were sort of leaning into that to drive the brand and give it more lifestyle. That we were at the front end of that. And equally with Jigsaw and Neom and Belstaff, a lot of community-driven sort of creating these tribes and communities. So again, that kept me and my teams at the front end of some of that work, which is, obviously where these things are going now.
And what about the role of stores now? So, you hear quite often, unfortunately, stores are perhaps dead. I mean, that sounds a bit dramatic, but you do hear it. And, how's the role of stores and how's their value measured now, would you say?
Yeah, and I used to work with a really, really talented guy called Dan Lum, who was at Reiss at the time, and he was great at throwing, quite early actually, to be fair to him. I won't give him too much credit, but he quite liked throwing out a "retail is dead" because it got him quoted quite regularly. So, in some respects, like old retail is dead, new retail is a whole different thing, and I think this is the problem where people talk about, it's shopping, right? Whatever you're doing is shopping, and it is on your own terms. And I've got I work with a sofa sort of furnishings business. Like people have been buying £5,000 sofas on their mobiles for years now, but it doesn't mean they don't come in and talk to someone and touch and feel. Yeah. It's just that point of making so again, this is the funnel and how you hit people and the always on approach. No, I think retail will always have a role for certain brands, and it depends on the brand and who they are. Like, there is no need for O2 to have shops, right? It doesn't need to happen, but yet they do, because there's a visibility element. And look, humans need human interaction. I think if anything has been shown in the last 12 months, it is the fundamental need for humans to interact with each other. Okay, and this works, it's okay, but it doesn't replace. And I think even with teams and working, like, you can work remotely, it's work, and good people work really well, but it's better for certain experiences, and that's what it's about. And quite often people are buying things they don't need, and particularly in the brands I have worked with, if you're a Belstaff, you do not need another coat in your wardrobe. Okay, so you've got to drive emotional engagement, interaction. It's a form of entertainment as well. So that sort of experiential element around the brand, and you've got to think about retail of two things really. What is it adding to the process? What are you delivering in terms of experiential, and also how you measure them? And I think this is the problem. Like, people look at it, and because the attribution model is imperfect, people look at that, and you come up with a P&L figure for a store, go, oh my god, it's lost 250 grand this year. Well, now that data is getting better and the attribution model is getting better, what is the role of that store within that journey? How much can you attribute back to that brand, to that customer and its purchase, and the value of that? So as data gets better and the attribution model gets better, then I think there is more confidence in marketing directors, CMOs, finance directors to be able to invest into the right brands in the right place. And I think what you're seeing with all of COVID is just a readdressing, well, actually a fast forward, first off, of consumer trends that have been there forever, like for a long time. Like, it's 10 years, the demise of the high street. Well, it's changing, it's not demising, and brands that are over-indexed on retail need to rebalance that. And so the brands that you're looking at and everything, whether it's CVAs and all the other things that are going on at the moment, it will be a readdressing to a more appropriate level. But equally, you look at all the pure play brands, there was a push from the pure plays going into some physical retail as well. So that shows the importance of having a physical touch point for brands. What we need to figure out now is how that works. So is it around click and collect? Is it about additional services? Is it about, and at Jigsaw we launched a store which had, art, coffee, a sort of lifestyle store. So will brands share spaces and they'll be more fluid and flexible? Probably. Will they be more around sort of interaction and not having to take the product home and sort of be a more omni-channel approach? Yes.
That's the senses, isn't it? When it comes to marketing, I think the stores that do it really well are the likes of Vans on Oxford Street. They've got a service there where you can see them customise and hand draw onto products. And even like Urban Outfitters, it's the shopping experience and getting the senses going rather than just walk in, pick up your item and pay for it. Even like having a DJ, you see Nike did do it and Topshop did it, and it's really getting everything going.
And retailtainment was there 22 years ago, right? So when I first started out, and you don't hear that word as much, thankfully. But I have heard phygital a few times over the year. The merge between physical and retail. It's
not quite as catchy, is it?
No.
That's a Timism right there.
That is when I get my words mixed up into one. Yeah, that is.
Yeah, it sounds slightly creepy as well. But it has always been that, and I think it just it's constantly evolving, and it needs to be looked at. Brands are always looking for ways to sort of add value, whether it's through personalization, customization, personal impression, making people feel like individuals. That is through the experience and through brands communications. That's only going to go one way. For Belstaff, we launched actually in the middle of lockdown a flagship store into New York, which was tough anyway, but that was very much built around a workshop mentality. Now, actually, the workshop's doing really well, but whether people see that and it brings them in, and then they go and buy the sort of off-the-shelf elements, like that still has done its job if it fulfills that function. So no, retail isn't dead. It's changing. It was changing before. it's just been a fast forward.
Changing the topic slightly to more of a recruitment perspective, because obviously that's our day job, and it'd be really interesting to just ask your advice for anyone considering a career within multi-channel marketing. What type of advice would you offer?
Yeah, I'll give the advice and then I'll contradict myself straight away. Sort of what I usually do. The good advice is stay broad, right? If you're starting out, it's very easy for people to say at the moment, okay, go acquisition, go data, focus on those, go, super sharp end, which is absolutely good advice. But then equally, if you can, I think, marketing is one word for a very multifaceted, and I have this when I try and explain it to my kids and then my parents years ago, like, what do I do? It's very much very broad, and I think it's trying to figure out what works for you rather than shoehorn yourself into the bit which is obviously growing. And all marketers should be data led, like at fact. Like if you've got to have that, you've got to be focused on it. But I think if you can, work in an environment where you can touch lots of different channels. I think it is going to be more difficult because of the way people are specializing to be a truly multi-channel marketer. You'll have to work for a smaller business to be able to touch lots of different things at the same time, and the specialism within each of them is getting deeper. Then it's tougher. But if you can, I would say stay broad, be able to touch lots of those different channels to gain the experience, and then decide which of those. Because you've got to enjoy it. That's the whole point of your career ahead of you. What are the bits that you are good at? What are the bits that you can move away from? What are the bits that you can't move away from and you just need to get better at?
What's the most creative application you've ever received as a hiring manager?
Right.
Quite creative.
It was once removed, really. The brand creative team in Reiss. There was a guy. Was it a guy or a girl? I can't remember. They didn't get the job, which is it was the sort of the bad bit. But they got through the door and they got to the next stage. So creative briefs, I think, are or great. Creative applications are great. I think if they can get you to the next stage, and then you've got to prove yourself. So yeah, that bit comes later. But that was on he or she had created it was underwear packaging, and their CV was within the underwear, and it was all sort of slightly tongue in cheek, and a few double entendres thrown in for mix as well. So
that's clever. I love that.
It was good. Yeah, it was really good. It wasn't direct to me, but it came to my desk straight away, and I was like, oh, that's good. You got to see them. And so
I'd be a bit worried if someone sent underwear to my desk. I'm not going to lie.
Your wife might have had a few questions.
Note to self: send underwear. I'll be that person for you.
Appreciate that. It'll be my first.
One of the final questions we wanted to cover really was what have you really taken away from the last 12 months with everything that's happened, lockdown, in terms of career and your personal life as well? What's been the biggest learn for you?
Good question. So personally, I'm not a teacher. There you go. My name is Alex Kelly, and I'm not a teacher.
You and a lot of parents, I think.
That is something I learned. Kids don't listen to their parents at the best of time, but there is a newfound respect for teachers is something I'll take away personally. I can claim to be a mentor and a coach, but teaching is something that I ran away from, and my wife is much better at it than me. So that is a personal learning. From a work point of view, I've learnt that good people and good driven teams do not need to be sat at their desk 9 to 5 to get their jobs done. And in fact, if you trust them to do their jobs and they're motivated, quite often, you'll get more out of them because people tend to overcompensate. On the flip side to that, and I touched on this earlier, you can't replace teams being together. We increased the level of communication, so lots and lots of communication sharing. Teams was pinging, all the good stuff, a little WhatsApp group for the fun stuff, keeping people motivated, because it was tough, right? I had people in my team that maybe lived on their own and hadn't seen people for physically seen people for like months.
Sure.
And it was really, really tough. So there was that bit, the human element of teams and looking after people as a line manager, that I learned more of the importance of that, and people's need for interaction. So we, at Belstaff, there are certain things, and the rules were very vague, right? They said, you aren't allowed to come into offices unless your role dictates it, and that it was purposely left as vague. Now, there are certain things you can't do, like you can't see products if you're in a clothing business. If you want to do a review on products, there's a point where you've got to see and touch and feel them. Brainstorms don't work for certain individuals, like they just sit in the background. So that sort of nurturing certain individuals digitally and getting them to sort of come forward, I think. So the human element around that and the need for teams to be together. Now, hopefully that will happen sooner. I don't think we'll go back to a point where everyone is in 5 days a week. I think there's a fundamental and good shift there. Lots of people who traveled 2 hours a day, an hour in, an hour back, 2 hours of their life back. That's you'd like to think we'd all put the shelves up and painted every single wall in a year ago. But none of us have. If only I had a year of time to get everything done, I'd do so, and none of us have. I think the importance of people being together and sort of that, particularly across teams, that quick fire interaction, because otherwise everything's an hour Zoom call, and suddenly you've only done 8 meetings rather than perhaps like 50 exchanges, quick fire exchanges. So that sort of that buzz of being in and around a team, which is the social element as well as effectiveness for creative teams, particularly on the marketing side of things, that people feed off. Right, that's the exciting thing, and why we go to work. It's not just about sort of getting the work done and getting paid. There's a social element to that as well, and I like to run busy, noisy, fun teams, hopefully, because I think that gets the most out of people.
Yeah, we've definitely been the same. I think it's great that we can work from home, but there is something to be said about feeding off that energy and being in the office and hearing what other people have got going on as well, because you get good ideas.
You miss things, right? It's just sort of the stuff that kicks around the ether. Hang on, what did you say?
Yeah.
And you just hear it, and that's where that quick fire stuff comes in. From a brand point of view, the thing that I take away from it as a marketeer is, resilient brands are doing well, and brands that are authentic. So authentic, resilient, purpose-driven brands that have honest conversations with their customers. So all of those, there are loads of brands that have gone to the brand graveyard, and probably they were going there anyway. This has just been a bit of a mercy bullet for some, which is really tough. Loads of people losing jobs, of course, so that makes it really tough. But were those brands going to survive long term? Had they transformed themselves digitally enough? Did they have enough of a point of view and a loyal enough customer community? Probably not, right? So that was going to happen. What that has done is allowed for, and as always in adversity, creativity shines, because people have to be creative, they have to adapt, so necessity drives that. So you've seen so many creative things come through over the last 12 months. It's been amazing. Like brands, you should never launch a brand in a recession, effectively. And like actually, you've seen people and brands and entrepreneurs doing things because they've been forced to, and great ideas coming through. So that's really encouraging. I think that sort of people will always find a way to sort of move forward. Creativity and good purpose-driven brands will always succeed.
Thank you so much for coming on. I think it's really great for everyone to hear what you do, because I remember the first time I sat down with a marketing director as a consultant and candidate, and I was in absolute awe of all the campaigns, and it was a brand that was quite close and dear to my heart as a kid. And he just spoke about all the stuff that he'd done throughout the year, and he'd been with this brand for such a long time. It goes back to what you were saying at the beginning. It's about creating that emotion, and when it's done well, it really does have an impact. So thank you for coming on and sharing with you.
Happy to share.
You've been listening to RHR Talks. In order to keep updated on future episodes, make sure to subscribe via Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. The best way to be kept up to date on vacancies and content would be to follow RHR on LinkedIn and register via our website at www.rhr.co.uk. If you're looking to hire and are interested in finding out more about all of the recruitment and advertising services we offer, then do reach out directly to any of our consultants or call 0207 432 8888.